You'd think warehouses didn't breathe, but this one did. It let out long, low moans as the metal beams creaked under the weight of something unseen. The fog had swallowed the district whole, blanketing the industrial block in a ghostly silence. The kind of silence that made your skin crawl and your gut whisper, "Don't go in there." But Officer Emma Thompson had learned long ago, when her canine partner Ace barked at nothing, it never turned out to be nothing. It was 4:47 a.m., a quiet Tuesday, the kind where you'd expect a false alarm from a broken camera or maybe a raccoon tripping motion sensors. But dispatch hadn't called this in. Emma was en route, taking the long way back to the station. Something had felt off as they passed the rusted gates of the Wilcox storage facility. Ace had gone rigid, his ears pinned forward, nose twitching like a trigger. And then came the growl. "Easy, boy," Emma whispered, hand resting on the Glock at her side. Ace ignored her. The German shepherd lunged forward, barking at the warehouse's side door, pawing and clawing like he knew something or someone was inside. Emma had seen Ace track down missing hikers, corner drug runners, and once pull a toddler from a lake. But this bark had something different behind it. Urgency, panic, almost grief. She unholstered her flashlight, heart hammering in her throat, and stepped into the shadows. If this kind of raw, real-life animal heroism speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Heroes for Animals. Because every bark tells a story, and some might just save a life. The warehouse door gave way with a loud groan, sending a rat skittering across her boot. She swept the beam of her flashlight left to right. Dust, rusted shelves, abandoned pallets. It looked like no one had been in here for years. But Ace didn't pause. He bolted forward, nose down, tail rigid like an arrow. "Hold up, Ace!" she called. But he was already halfway across the warehouse. "Barkikit, Said Steed," Didakit toward the rear corridor. Emma jogged after him, boots crunching over broken glass and bird droppings. Her breath formed clouds in the cold metallic air. That's when she heard it. A sound so faint she might have missed it if Ace hadn't stopped cold and whined. It wasn't crying. It wasn't screaming. It was lower than that. Guttural. Like someone trying to moan with their mouth full of cloth. Her flashlight shook. She turned a corner and found Ace scratching at a bolted metal door. "Back up," she said softly, her hand reaching for the handle. It didn't budge. Emma scanned the frame. 4 screws at each corner. Whoever locked this door hadn't used a latch. They'd sealed it. She reached into her vest and pulled out her Leatherman tool, working 1 screw at a time. The whole time, Ace sat, trembling, eyes locked on the door like he could see through it. The last screw fell to the ground. She yanked the door open and nearly dropped the flashlight. Inside was a woman, a young woman, barely older than 25, slumped against a stack of insulation rolls. Her hands and feet were bound with thick rope, her hair matted and skin pale like wax, and she was pregnant. Very pregnant. Her belly strained against a thin cotton shirt soaked with sweat and grime. Her eyes fluttered open, bloodshot and dazed. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. "Oh my God! Dispatch! This is Officer Thompson. I need medical assistance at Wilcox Storage, ASAP. Female victim, late-stage pregnancy, signs of dehydration and trauma. She's still alive." The woman coughed weakly, barely turning her head. Emma dropped to her knees, untying the ropes with shaking fingers. "You're safe now. We've got you. You're okay." But the woman didn't respond. Ace whimpered beside her. Then, through cracked lips, the woman whispered, He said no one would find me." The ambulance screeched through the fog 10 minutes later. EMTs lifted the woman onto a stretcher as her stomach seized in a spasm of pain. Labor had begun. Emma followed close behind, still replaying the scene in her head. The ropes, the darkness, the stink of mold, the fear. And that phrase, He said no one would find me. Who was he? Why was she there? Why was no one looking for her? She turned to the EMT. Did she give you a name? The woman groaned, and between gasps, choked out, Tell Michael, they found me. The name sparked something. Emma opened her patrol app and searched missing person reports. Nothing matched. She checked again. Still nothing. Either this woman had never been reported missing, or someone filed the report and lied about the details. A second ambulance arrived, but it wasn't for the woman. It was for backup. The department had received a silent call trace from Emma's radio when she forced the door. Good. She needed someone else to see what she'd seen. Come with me, she told Officer Blake, leading him back into the warehouse. There's more. Ace had stayed behind, still sniffing the floor. He barked once, then began clawing at a stack of wooden crates in the far left corner of the warehouse. Emma joined him, heart pounding. One by one, she and Blake moved the crates, revealing a dented metal panel, slightly ajar. Inside was a narrow gap, just enough space for a box. And inside that box, a burner phone, a USB stick, a small folder labeled RD Timeline. Emma opened it. Her stomach turned. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, of the same pregnant woman. Different angles, different weeks. Some looked candid, others posed. Each was dated, each labeled. There were timestamps, notes, even references to her due date. A logbook of her pregnancy, documented like a science experiment. Blake looked at her. What the hell is this? Emma shook her head slowly. This wasn't just kidnapping. Someone was keeping track of her, watching her, waiting. Waiting for what? He asked. She didn't answer. But her gut knew. As the ambulance pulled away into the fog, Ace sat by the warehouse door, tail thumping once as Emma emerged. She knelt down beside him, rubbing behind his ears. You did good, buddy, she whispered. You did real good. But her mind was far from calm. Who was Michael? Why was no one looking for a woman days away from giving birth? And more importantly, was this the only warehouse? Or had Ace just scratched the surface of something far more disturbing? The hospital lights were harsh, too clean, too bright, the kind that made everything feel exposed. Officer Emma Thompson stood near the double doors of the maternity wing, arms crossed, watching through the glass as doctors and nurses moved in and out of the delivery room like clockwork. The young woman they'd rescued, still unnamed officially, was in active labor. No family had shown up. No one had called. She was alone, except for Ace. The K-9 was resting on the tile floor beside Emma's boots, his head up, ears alert, eyes glued to the room as if he understood this was far from over. Emma exhaled slowly. You sure know how to pick 'em, don't you? She whispered, reaching down to scratch behind his ears. Ace gave a low whine, tail thumping once. The name Michael echoed in Emma's head like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. She'd spent the past hour digging through the system, searching everything from local voter rolls to private security databases. There were too many Michaels in the area. Michael Parks, Michael Jennings, Michael Dawson. Wait, that one. Michael Dawson. She pulled up his file. CEO of a mid-level biotech company. Lived in the upscale part of town. Wife's name, Rachel Dawson. Emma's heart skipped. She called dispatch. Can you confirm if Rachel Dawson was ever reported missing? A pause. Affirmative. 3 weeks ago. Husband filed the report, claimed she left voluntarily. No signs of foul play. Emma blinked. Voluntarily? Yep. He said she cleaned out a joint bank account and ran off with a man she'd met online. Emma almost laughed. Rachel Dawson, the woman who could barely speak when they found her, hadn't cleaned out anything. She hadn't run anywhere. She'd been stuffed into a locked room and left to give birth alone. Emma slid her badge across the receptionist desk and got access to Rachel's hospital room just as a nurse stepped out. She's stable, the nurse whispered. Baby's coming. Could be hours, though. She's strong. just really dehydrated and terrified. Emma nodded and stepped inside. Rachel lay in bed, sweat matting her hair to her forehead. Her belly rose and fell with each breath, and her hands gripped the blanket like it might disappear. She looked up. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I would," Emma replied gently, taking a chair by her bedside. "I need to ask you a few questions. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to." Rachel nodded slowly. "Is he here?" "Who? Michael?" Emma shook her head. "Not that we know of, but I need to understand what happened." Rachel closed her eyes. Her lips trembled. He said I was a liability." Emma leaned forward. "Why? What did he mean?" Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. "I was going to testify. Against him. Against the people he works with." "Testify for what?" "Fraud. Illegal trials. They were paying women to carry children, and then disappearing them before they gave birth. Selling the babies. Private clients. Overseas adoptions. Off the books." Emma's stomach turned. "And you were part of this?" Rachel nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. "At first I didn't know. I thought it was legit. Surrogacy stuff. I handled some of the documentation. Then I saw the same names reappearing. Women who didn't make it past the 8th month. And when you tried to leave, they locked me in that place. He said the baby wasn't mine anymore. Said no one would ever find me." Emma's jaw clenched. "You've done enough," she said softly. "You're safe now, I promise." Rachel nodded weakly. "He has files, flash drives. He hides them in his home office, behind the whiskey shelf." Emma blinked. That was oddly specific, but it matched the burner phone and folder they'd already found. This was bigger than a domestic abuse case. This was organized trafficking. Back at the station, Emma filed her preliminary report and requested a formal investigation into Michael Dawson. But it wasn't easy. The man was well-connected, a campaign donor. Multiple judges owed him favors. If they were going to get inside that house, it would require more than suspicion. It would require proof. And that's when she remembered the USB drive. She unlocked the evidence box and plugged the stick into a secure station terminal. Dozens of folders, some labeled with dates, others with women's names. Inside each folder were files, scanned contracts, blood test results, psychological evaluations, all under pseudonyms. And then came the videos. Emma clicked on one. The screen showed a woman bound to a hospital gurney, eyes wide, crying. A date timestamp in the corner. March 8th. Another file. April 14th. Different woman. Same gurney. Same bindings. Same final month of pregnancy. Emma felt her stomach heave. They weren't just monitoring pregnancies. They were collecting them. She called her captain. Within an hour, the FBI was on site. "This isn't just a local case anymore," the agent in charge said. "This looks like cross-state human trafficking. We've been following threads on this for months, but this is the first solid lead." Emma nodded. She's the only one who made it out alive. For now, the FBI moved fast. They obtained a warrant for Michael Dawson's home and business office. But by the time they got there, he was gone. Emma stood on the steps of Rachel's hospital room later that night, watching the baby sleep in a heated incubator through the nursery glass. A little girl, 5 pounds 9 ounces. She'd come into this world in darkness, but now she was safe. For now. Behind her, Ace whined quietly. "You knew," she murmured. "You knew someone was in there." He didn't respond, of course, just laid his head on his paws like a soldier finally at ease. The next morning, Emma returned to the warehouse. Ace sniffed around with purpose. She expected it to feel cleaner now, less haunted. But something still felt wrong. Then suddenly Ace stopped, stiffened. He growled and turned to a stack of insulation panels behind the far wall. Emma followed his nose. Ace, A began to scratch, hard. Underneath the panels was a thin seam in the concrete. A trapdoor. Emma pried it open, coughing from the dust and mold. A wooden ladder led downward into darkness. She clicked on her flashlight. What she saw next made her knees buckle. A basement, barely finished, with walls covered in foam insulation, cables, wires, and several screens. A makeshift surveillance room. Camera feeds, not from this warehouse, from others, each labeled with a date and name. Mira, Bay 6, Allie, Lot 3, Rachel, South Unit. Some feeds were live, some were blank. Emma stared in horror. This wasn't one victim. This wasn't even one facility. This was a network. She climbed back up, shaking, and looked at Ace. "Good boy," she whispered, voice breaking. This wasn't over. Not even close. The basement smelled like mildew and regret. Emma stood at the edge of the trapdoor, still holding her breath, as the glow from her flashlight trembled along the walls of the underground room. Every inch of the space was a twisted reflection of control. Camera monitors, labeled binders, tagged storage boxes. Someone had spent years building this place. Not to trap one woman, to manage many. Ace sat silently beside her, his usual panting replaced by a watchful stillness. He seemed to sense what Emma had already concluded. This was no fluke rescue. This was just the beginning. Emma stepped into the bunker, her boots crunching lightly on the cracked tile. She aimed her flashlight toward the ceiling, wired with old duct tape and makeshift insulation. Soundproofing, designed to keep screams inside. She walked to the desk. A set of external drives sat stacked like poker chips beside an unplugged laptop. Underneath the table, she found something that made her heart seize. A worn baby blanket, still folded, still clean. Back at the precinct, the FBI had taken over operations. A task force was forming, and Rachel Dawson was now under protective watch at the hospital. But Emma couldn't sleep. Not with that image stuck in her mind. The blanket. Someone had prepared for a birth down there. Had planned for it. And not just one. The surveillance feeds showed at least 5 women in different locations. She spent the next 2 hours combing through the USB drives. Most of the files were coded, scrambled, or incomplete. But one folder was readable. A13, Sequence Archive. Inside were hours of footage. Emma watched in stunned silence. Each clip was time-stamped, showing different women, some strapped down, others pacing in panic. One woman stared straight into the camera and said a name. "My name is Elena Carter. I was taken from Oklahoma. If anyone ever sees this, please help my baby." The clip cut off. Another video started. A woman with dark hair, pregnant. Silent tears down her cheeks. She didn't speak, just looked directly into the lens, as if trying to will her message through the screen. Emma paused the video. In the corner, on the wall behind the woman, was a familiar logo. A painted emblem. Ardes Logistics. It rang a bell. Emma did a quick search. A shell company, headquartered 2 blocks from Michael Dawson's corporate office. Emma walked into the hospital later that morning with coffee in hand. Rachel was awake, sitting upright, baby girl swaddled in her arms. The nurse had written "Baby Girl Dawson" on the bassinet tag. No first name yet. "Hey," Emma said softly, stepping into the room. Rachel looked up, tired but stronger than before. "You found something, didn't you?" Emma nodded. "More than I wanted to. There's a whole network. Cameras, files, GPS trackers, and women. Dozens of them." Rachel's jaw clenched. "They're selling the babies. Some to families, others to clinics. The kind no one talks about." Emma sat beside the bed. "I need more from you. Anything you remember. Names, codes, places." Rachel hesitated, then whispered, "There was a name. A woman who used to recruit. Her name was Tara. Tara Kim. She was Michael's assistant. She used to handle all the paperwork. The cleanup, too." Emma pulled out her notebook. "She's still with the company?" Rachel nodded. "Probably running it now." An hour later, Emma was outside the RDS Logistics building. Ace sat beside her in the passenger seat, alert and fidgety. The company's front office looked ordinary. Glass doors, clean white signage, a few potted plants outside. But Emma had seen too much to trust clean facades. She walked in, flashing her badge. The receptionist stiffened. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Tara Kim." The woman swallowed. "She's not in right now." Emma smiled politely. "You sure?" "Her car's in the parking lot." The receptionist paused. "Too long." "I'll wait," Emma said, stepping aside and planting herself on the lobby bench like she had all day. Ace sat at her feet, eyes fixed on the hallway behind the front desk. 10 minutes passed. Then something changed. Ace stood up, hackles raised, growl rumbling. Emma followed his gaze and saw a woman in heels, hair in a tight bun, trying to slip out a side hallway. "Tara Kim!" Emma called out, hand on her holster. The woman froze, then bolted. Ace exploded forward, leash snapping taut as Emma took off after her. Down the hall, past rows of cubicles, Tara turned sharply and yanked open a stairwell door. Emma followed fast. "Tara, don't run! You're only making this worse!" Tara didn't listen. She sprinted up the stairs to the roof, gasping as she shoved the metal door open, only to be greeted by Ace lunging up behind her, barking loud enough to rattle glass. Tara screamed and fell to her knees. Emma reached her seconds later, cuffs out. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, obstruction of justice, and unlawful detainment of multiple women." Tara didn't speak, just shook. But the look in her eyes said it all. She knew they were caught. At the station, Tara broke faster than expected. Emma sat in the interrogation room, watching her fidget with the plastic cup of water. "They'll come for me," Tara whispered. "Who?" Emma asked. "The buyers, the funders. You think Michael's in charge? He's a puppet. Just like me." Emma leaned in. "Names." Tara hesitated, then whispered, "There's a ledger in the Aspen house, second-floor office, hidden behind the piano. Everything's in there. Names, accounts, even judges." Emma didn't flinch, but her heart raced. This went deeper than she thought. That night, Emma sat alone in her kitchen, Ace curled at her feet. The fridge hummed. The clock ticked. She stared at her laptop. The baby monitor footage still paused. Her phone buzzed. An alert from the FBI field team. They'd raided the Aspen property. They found the ledger and a shallow grave. Emma didn't want to ask, but she did. One of the missing women, Elena Carter, the one from the video. The next morning, Emma brought Rachel and her baby to a secure house in a quiet suburb. Rachel was reluctant, scared, but grateful. "She needs a name," Rachel said, rocking the infant slowly. "Something strong." Emma smiled. "She already is." Rachel looked up. "What do you think of Grace?" Emma's throat tightened. "Grace is perfect." As Emma walked back to her cruiser, Ace jumped into the back seat, tongue out, tail wagging. She scratched behind his ears. "Still chasing ghosts, huh?" Ace barked once. But Emma knew this wasn't the end. There were more warehouses, more victims, and someone out there still pulling the strings. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated a dog with a nose for truth. And a cop who refused to quit. The house in Aspen Ridge was picture perfect. White columns, fresh landscaping, American flag swaying gently on the porch. The kind of place you'd expect to see on a holiday postcard, not the center of a human trafficking investigation. But Emma had learned something very early in her career. Evil hides in plain sight. Sometimes it wears a badge, sometimes a tailored suit, and sometimes it waters the lawn at 7 a.m. like any other neighbor. She stepped out of the SUV with Ace at her side, both of them staring up at the Dawson estate. It looked empty, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting. FBI had cleared the property the night before, unlocked the office behind the baby grand piano, recovered the hidden ledger. Inside that black leather book were names, dollar amounts, coded addresses. They were still trying to decipher all of it, but one thing was clear. Michael Dawson wasn't the top of the pyramid. He was the doorman. Ace sniffed the grass near the porch and whined. His nose brushed the welcome mat. Emma bent down, lifted it. Nothing. But Ace didn't stop. He walked along the edge of the house, tail twitching, nose low to the ground. "Smell something, partner?" Emma asked. He stopped at a side garden bed, barked once. Emma crouched and cleared away a few leaves. A plastic utility box. She pried it open. Inside, a phone. No screen, no brand. Just a sealed casing with a blinking red light and an antenna. A transmitter, not meant to call from here, but to receive. Her radio chirped. "Emma, it's Blake. You need to see this. The last financial logs from Dawson's company just came through. Millions were funneled through RDS Logistics into something called Sanctum Corp. Ever heard of it?" Emma froze. Her breath caught. Yes, she had. Years ago, Sanctum was the name of a defunct religious nonprofit involved in multiple allegations of child exploitation. Charges were dropped. Records vanished. The founders disappeared. Now it was back, rebranded and buried under shell corporations. "I have now," she replied grimly. "Tell the task force we've got an old ghost in a new suit." The trap came later that night. Emma wasn't supposed to go alone, but the text came from a secured line, the same number used by FBI case leads. It read, "We have the next warehouse. Coordinates below. Suspect movement tonight. Come quietly. Don't alert media." Emma checked the coordinates. Rural property. About an hour outside town. She looked at Ace. "Tomambika, Yushanice. We going?" He barked twice, already pacing near the cruiser. The road wound into the woods like a question mark. No signs, no cell signal, just thick trees and a broken sky, the moon peeking through heavy clouds. Emma drove slowly, one hand on the wheel, the other hovering near her holster. At mile marker 58, she saw it. A gravel path with a rusted sign, "Private, no trespassing." She turned in. The warehouse was larger than the last. Older. The tin roof sagged in the middle, like it had a secret. Ace growled the moment they stopped. Emma got out quietly. The air was thick with moisture, like a storm was sitting just out of reach. She gave Ace the signal. He moved first, swift, silent. She followed. At the front entrance, the door creaked open with a touch. No lock, no sign of forced entry. "Too easy," she whispered. Inside was pitch black. Emma clicked her flashlight on. Ace darted ahead and then stopped cold. His tail dropped. His body stiffened. He barked once, then turned back and lunged at her. Too late. The floor beneath Emma gave way. She hit something hard, metal, and cold. Pain shot through her shoulder as she rolled, trying to keep her hand on the flashlight. Ace barked above, frantic. Emma groaned, reaching for her radio, but it had smashed on impact. The room smelled of mold and copper. Concrete walls. No windows. A light snapped on above her, flickering, and then a voice, distorted, mechanical, filled the space. "You should have stayed out of this, Officer Thompson." Emma sat up slowly. "Michael?" The voice chuckled. "Michael was a tool. You're not even close to the real architects. You've disrupted our deliveries. Stolen inventory. That's not something we overlook." Emma stood. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "You're going to jail. You and everyone behind this." The voice laughed again. "Do you know how long this network has existed? Decades. Long before you were born. You think a dog and a badge are going to end us?" Emma moved to the edge of the room. She felt the wall, cold, seamless. Then she spotted something in the corner, a small ventilation shaft. Maybe. Above, Ace was still barking. But now he wasn't alone. A black SUV had pulled up. Two men stepped out, armed. Ace growled low. The first man aimed a taser. Ace darted, fast as lightning, and bit down on the man's arm with surgical precision. The second man shouted, but Ace twisted and flipped the attacker off balance, then sprinted for the edge of the building, leading the men on a wild chase through the tree line. Inside the pit, Emma heard the commotion. She smiled, blood trickling from a gash on her cheek. "You messed with the wrong K," she muttered. She grabbed her pen light and crawled toward the vent. It was tight, but not sealed. She worked the screws loose with her multi-tool. It opened just enough. She slid through, scraping her arms, ribs, until she reached the other side. A utility hallway. She stumbled upward, found a metal door and shoved it open. The night air hit her like a wave, and Ace was there, waiting, blood on his muzzle. A torn sleeve from one of the attackers in his teeth. "Good boy," she gasped, collapsing to her knees. Within minutes, backup arrived. The two suspects were caught, one unconscious, one begging for a deal. Inside the warehouse, they found more than expected. Empty bassinets, V-hooks, holding rooms with rubber mats and padded walls. And in one sealed drawer, passports, dozens of them, different names, same faces, all pregnant women. Later, in the hospital, Rachel clutched her daughter tight as Emma told her everything. The trap, the fake message, the new facility. Rachel looked at her, tears in her eyes. "You almost died." Emma smiled faintly. "I've got a stubborn dog and a strong gut." "That helps." Rachel nodded. "And now what?" Emma looked out the window. "At dawn, we go after the real names, the ones behind the curtain." She paused, then said, "We found a name in the ledger, one that keeps showing up under donations to judges, city officials, and Sanctum Corp." Rachel leaned in. "Who?" Emma said it slowly. "Senator Frank Whitmore." Rachel went pale. "He baptized our daughter. We used to go to his house for Christmas brunch." Emma nodded. "Welcome to the real America." That night, Emma lay on her couch, Ace curled beside her, snoring gently. She couldn't sleep, not when she knew how far this thing reached. But tomorrow was coming, and they weren't done yet, not by a long shot. The rain had started just after midnight, a steady curtain that draped over the city like someone trying to wash away the sins of the past few days. But no storm could cleanse what Officer Emma Thompson had just uncovered. She stood in front of a boarded-up auto shop on the east side of town, water running off the brim of her jacket. Her canine partner Ace beside her, tail stiff, nose twitching. "This is the third lead tonight," Emma muttered into her radio. "The other two were decoys. Let's hope this isn't another one." Ace gave a low growl. That was all the confirmation she needed. The tip had come from one of the arrested men at the warehouse ambush. After 6 hours in a federal holding cell and the promise of witness protection, he gave up the location of another site. He called it the room where they kept eyes on everything. A command center. A surveillance room. Emma moved quietly, flashlight in one hand, Glock in the other. Ace led, sniffing near the building's loading bay. The place was supposed to be condemned, but fresh tire tracks in the mud said otherwise. "Back door's broken," Emma said softly. "Looks recent." She pushed inside, boots crunching on scattered nails and broken tile. The smell was unmistakable. Old oil, rot, and something else, stale bleach. They were trying to clean something up. Ace paused at a staircase leading down. He barked once sharply. "Basement," Emma said, heart pounding. "Of course it's a basement." They descended slowly, one step at a time. The light from her flashlight hit something shiny, rows of monitors. Some were cracked. Others still glowed faint blue. Emma stepped into the room, blinking. It looked like the control room of a small airport. A dozen screens showing grainy footage. Hallways, storage units, locked doors. And faces. Women, all of them pregnant. Some pacing in tiny rooms, others strapped to chairs. Some crying, some eerily still. "Oh my God." Emma's breath caught as she stepped closer. Labels sat below each screen. Unit C, Alley. Bay 4, East. Sophia. North Post, Rachel. Rachel. Her stomach turned. Rachel had been watched. Every moment. They'd monitored her like she was a lab experiment. And she wasn't the only one. She clicked a few switches. A drawer popped open below the desk, filled with flash drives, receipts, even airline itineraries. She picked one up. A printed itinerary for a woman listed only as Marcy, from El Paso to Istanbul, with a delivery date marked Infant Transfer 38 weeks. Suddenly, Ace growled again. Emma turned just in time to see a shadow move past the staircase outside the room. She ducked behind the console, heart in her throat. Ace? Ace didn't bark. He crouched, still as stone, ready to spring. Footsteps. Then voices, 2 male, 1 female. They said the cops were done searching. "We come back in 2 weeks. Torch the place." Emma peeked around the corner. 3 people, one of them holding a gas can. Another, a black laptop bag. The third woman held a phone to her ear. "No, there's no one down here. We're just sweeping for files." That was all Emma needed. She stood and stepped out, gun drawn. "Put the bags down, hands where I can see them." Chaos erupted. The woman screamed. One man pulled a gun. Emma fired once, striking him in the shoulder. He dropped. The second man ran. Ace leapt like a missile, bringing him to the ground in seconds. The woman tried to dash for the stairs, but Emma tackled her from behind. Within 30 seconds, it was over. Ace stood panting, proud. The monitors flickered behind them, still displaying women locked in hidden locations. Back at the station, the FBI took over the evidence again. But this time, Emma wasn't willing to step back. She demanded to stay on the task force. They let her in, because she'd done what no one else could. She'd broken into the nerve center, the core of the operation. And what they found was worse than anyone feared. The flash drives contained not just footage and files, but live IP addresses to other warehouses across the country. Dallas, Orlando, Denver, Sacramento. Each location had one thing in common. It sat near an RDS logistics facility. But there was something else, something buried deeper in the data. Bank transfers, huge ones. Donations from anonymous entities to a single trust account. That account was traced to a private organization registered in Washington, D.C. Sanctum Corp. Emma sat in the FBI briefing room the next morning, her boots still damp, Ace sleeping at her feet. On the screen in front of them, a photo appeared. Senator Frank Whitmore, the same man Rachel said used to come to Christmas brunch. The same man whose name was written in the recovered ledger. 3 separate times. "He's clean on paper," the agent said, "but the routing numbers match." His foundation, Future Families Initiative, made $10 million in unexplained donations to RDS subsidiaries over the last 6 years. Emma leaned back in her chair. "He's funding it." The room went quiet, until the lead agent said what everyone was thinking. Not just funding it, he may be running it. Emma returned to Rachel's safe house that night with the news. Rachel sat on the couch, rocking her baby, eyes heavy with worry. "Is it really that big?" she asked softly. Emma nodded. "It goes all the way to D.C. The warehouse you were in? Just one piece. We think there are at least 15 more." Rachel swallowed hard. "How many women?" "We don't know yet. Maybe hundreds. But they're not going to hide forever." Rachel looked down at her daughter. "She deserves better." "She's going to have better," Emma said. "Because of you." Later, Emma sat alone in her apartment. Ace laid nearby, chewing lazily on his rubber ball, tail wagging. She pulled out her phone and stared at the latest message from the FBI. New operation, codename Widow's Nest. Target, Senator Frank Whitmore. She exhaled long and slow. The man who sat on committees for child welfare. The man who smiled into cameras about family values. The man who may have orchestrated the sale of innocent lives behind closed doors. She looked at Ace. "We're not done, are we?" He tilted his head. Outside, thunder rolled again. But inside, she was calm, because the hunt had just entered its final stage. And this time, she wasn't chasing shadows. She was going to bring them into the light. The Capitol building never looked more imposing. To the outside world, Senator Frank Whitmore was a pillar of virtue. A former military officer turned politician. A family man. A loud voice for American values. To Officer Emma Thompson, standing beneath the marble dome with her canine partner Ace at her side, he looked like exactly what he was. The face of the monster they'd been chasing. It had taken months to get here. Every flash drive recovered. Every pregnant woman rescued. Every coded ledger decrypted. And at the center of it all, a network so deeply rooted in the country's most trusted institutions, It made Emma question everything she thought she knew about justice. But they'd done it. They had proof, unfiltered, unshakable, undeniable. And today, they were going to make sure the world saw it too. The plan was set. FBI, agents, U.S. Marshals, and a federal prosecutor were positioned outside the senator's office. Emma was granted special clearance to join, not just because she uncovered the truth, but because of who she brought with her. Ace, the K-9 who never gave up. Inside the office, Whitmore was wrapping up a meeting. His voice carried through the door, confident, casual. Emma waited for the green light. 3 seconds later it came. She pushed the door open. "Senator Whitmore, you're under federal investigation for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, unlawful confinement, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of wire fraud." The room went still. The senator turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "You've got no idea what you're interfering with," he said, voice low, cold. Emma stared him down. "Actually, I do. I've walked through the warehouses. I've held the women's hands. I've seen their babies. And I've looked them in the eyes when they realized they were finally free." Whitmore smirked. "They were already lost, forgotten by society. We gave them purpose." Emma's voice turned to steel. "You sold them." Ace let out a soft growl. The senator's security detail moved, but U.S. Marshals stepped in immediately. Whitmore didn't resist. But as they cuffed him and read him his rights, he turned to Emma and whispered, "Cut off the head, and the body just grows another. You're too late." Emma didn't flinch. "Maybe, but not for the ones we saved." The trial that followed was the most publicized federal case in over a decade. Emma took the stand. So did Rachel. So did 5 other women found through the network. Each testimony painted the same picture: recruitment, isolation, manipulation, and captivity. Whitmore pled not guilty. But the files from the surveillance room, the wire transfers, and the personal ledger told the truth. He was sentenced to multiple life terms without parole. Sanctum Corp was dismantled. Its board dissolved. Nearly 30 co-conspirators were arrested across the country. The headlines called it the deepest wound in modern America. But to Emma, it was just justice, long overdue. Months later, Emma visited Rachel in a small coastal town where she'd started a new life under a different name. Rachel looked stronger, brighter. Her daughter, Grace, was toddling around the porch with a toy stethoscope around her neck. "She says she wants to be a vet," Rachel said with a tired smile. Emma laughed. "Better than a cop." Rachel picked Grace up. "You gave us a second chance." Emma shook her head. "You saved yourself. I just happened to be there when Ace barked." They stood in silence, watching the little girl chase butterflies in the garden. Then Rachel asked, "Do you ever think about the ones you couldn't save?" Emma hesitated. "Every night." "But we saved her," she said, nodding at Grace. Rachel smiled, and for once it reached her eyes. Back at the precinct, Ace had a new collar, blue leather with a gold badge stitched into the side. The department honored him with a medal, and he became the face of the new National K-9 Response Task Force. Trained dogs who worked side by side with law enforcement to uncover human trafficking and exploitation. Emma was promoted to Special Liaison Officer for Victim Recovery. She trained officers, reviewed cold cases, and led outreach programs for survivors. But the nightmares still came. The darkness they'd uncovered, it didn't go away. It just hid deeper. Some nights Emma would wake up, Ace asleep at the foot of the bed, and wonder just how many other places were still out there. How many other women were still waiting for someone to hear them? One crisp fall morning, Emma received a letter. No return address. Inside, a simple message. "You're not done. We're still out here." She folded the note slowly and looked at Ace. He was already up, pacing toward the door. At the very end, this wasn't just about catching one man. It was about the voices buried in silence, the lives dismissed, the truth denied. But Emma, Ace, and a team of believers had pierced that silence. They'd turned whispers into headlines. They'd turned victims into survivors. And maybe, just maybe, they'd inspired a few others to speak up too. Thank you for following this powerful journey with us on Heroes for Animals. If you were moved by Emma and Ace's story, we invite you to share this episode and help spread awareness about the real heroes, human and canine, who protect the vulnerable. Here's our question to you. Do you believe dogs like Ace should be part of every law enforcement team investigating human trafficking? Why or why not? Why? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And remember, sometimes it only takes one bark to bring the truth to light. Let me know if you'd like a short YouTube video summary script, thumbnail hook lines, AI image prompts for each part of the story, a bonus epilogue featuring Ace's retirement or next mission.